Hey guys, Tanya here with Sportsman's Guide. I'm joined today with Shane Simpson, 3-time Minnesota State Calling Champion and Mossy Oak Pro staffer. He's also the producer of Calling All Turkeys, so check out his website. So Shane, do you want to give us a little bit of an intro on yourself?
My name is Shane Simpson. Originally from South Carolina. Moved up to Minnesota back in 2008, so I've been years. What else is there to know about me? Okay, how did I get into turkey? Back in South Carolina, I used to hunt quite a bit, turkey hunt, and our seasons were long. We had, you could kill 5 birds, and so when I moved to Minnesota and the season was only 5 days, you could only kill 1 bird, I started looking for people to tag, to video their hunts and do that sort of thing. One thing led to another, and now I'm producing a web show for Calling All Turkeys. Back when I was little in South Carolina, I always wanted to compete, but I guess I was real shy back then. And when I moved to Minnesota, I saw there was a contest up here, and no one knew me up here, and so I figured if I get up there on that stage, then I wouldn't be, no one would ever see me again if I made a fool of myself.
Just in case.
Yeah. So I entered my first contest up here, and I actually was surprised I did pretty well. I placed 3rd and started looking for more contests to enter.
It's great for your first competition.
Yeah, and that struck a fire in me, and I started competing, and lo and behold, one year I ended up at Grand Nationals on a stage I thought I'd never end up on.
Wow.
And I placed down there in Alhooty one year, and I've won, like you said, I've won the Minnesota State Calling Championship a few years. I am the current state champion. And so, did I miss anything?
How many competitions do you think you competed in over your course of competition?
Oh, that's quite a bit. Conservatively, I must say about 30.
Wow.
It may be a few more, maybe a few less, but I think it's around 30. I've placed in most of them, and they have multiple divisions at each venue. So there may be an amateur division or Alhooty or an open division or friction. And I've placed in at least one of those divisions at almost every contest I've attended. So yeah, I've been fortunate in that regard. And it's really helped improve my calling. One of the things a lot of people, and I'm guilty of it too, when turkey season used to roll around, I'd pull the calls out a week or 2 before the season and then hunt and then put my calls away. As a competition caller, you're forced to practice more. You're forced to actually listen to turkey audio and become better, because you're not just trying to call in turkeys, you're competing against someone. You got to impress the judges and sound as realistic and as close to real turkeys as you can. And so I carry a call with me 365 days a year. There's a mouth call in my pocket. And so I've seen a notable improvement in my calling ability, and I think that directly relates to my success in the field. I've seen a marked increase in my success rates in the past 4 or 5 years. It's really gotten to my liking.
That's awesome. It's such a unique trade to get into, so it's kind of interesting to see how you prepare throughout the year for that. What do you think, can you explain to us kind of a day hunting, what that looks like to you, how you kind of start that out and your tricks and tips in the field?
All right, so I'll go through a basic out-of-state public land hunt where I've never been there before. So what I would typically do, I'm going to go online and find maps and that sort of thing and try to scout online. I'll even, and this is a trick well, not a trick, or something I used recently, I'm going out to South Dakota to hunt in an area I've never hunted. And so I got on Google and I looked, trying to find suitable areas that look like good turkey habitat on the public land. I actually found a little country store right there in town near there, and I got the number, I called, and morning, this is Jim. Hey Jim, this is Shane from Minnesota. I'm coming out to turkey hunt. I just had a weird question. Are there any turkeys around there? Oh yeah, there's plenty of turkeys. And so right there I already knew there was turkeys around, and I got some tips from him. And so I have a head start there. So now I get out there and to the place I'm going to hunt. I've already picked a spot on the map where I want to start my hunt. And I don't really have a spot that I'm going to set up and start calling. It's a spot where I'm going to listen.
Okay.
And the first thing I'm going to do, as soon as it starts to break light, where I think the birds may gobble to a locator, is I will get my barred owl call and try to get one to gobble with it.
So we have an owl call here. Do you kind of want to show us how to use that?
Sure.
Awesome.
So this is a barred owl, B-A-R-R-E-D, not to be confused with barn owl. And this is this owl is over most of the country. There are a few pockets here and there that don't have barred owls, but for the most part, if you're turkey hunting, you're going to be in barred owl country. And it's not because it's an owl that they gobble. Turkeys gobble any loud noise. It's called a shock gobble. It's just a reflex. You know,
A shock gobble?
Shock gobble. A dog barking in the distance, a train horn, a crow, goose, anything like that.
Okay.
But the key is, or what you're trying to do is sound like part of the woods. You don't want them to think there's something new there, a human hunter. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what you're playing mind games with them and yourself, I guess. You're trying to set that.
Be one with nature.
Yes. And so, first thing I'll do, and I don't want to do a long series with my owl hoots. I want to, because they may gobble as soon as you start blowing the owl call. So you want to make it a short one real quick at the beginning. So I'll do a short one like this. And listen, and he may gobble. If you do a long series of owl hoots, he may gobble while you're doing that, and you'll never hear him gobble. I may do that once or twice, 3 times, just do those quick ones. And if he doesn't, nothing gobbles nearby, then I'll get a little more aggressive. I'll do the typical 8 note of an owl, which is woo, 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 woo. Oh, heard that, I'm sure.
Is that what you were saying is the who cooks for you?
Who cooks for you,
Okay.
who cooks for y'all, or you all. And so it goes like this. And I just throw a little roll on the end to sound realistic, and I just flutter my tongue with that. And with any owl call, you need to create a little chamber, you know, put your hand on the end and cup it just to get that sound. And you'll know why in a second. If he doesn't gobble to my 8 note, then I'm going to add some laughs. And you get the laughs by the call, opening that chamber, and you get a little louder, and it gives that laugh of a barred owl. And those laughs are a mating pair communicating. So it'll sound like this. And that should trigger a gobble. If not, there's probably, or he's just not in the mood to gobble.
That's super
And then
cool.
you could, you know, as the morning progresses, you may switch to something like a crow call, so you have one over there.
Yeah, why don't you show us how to do this one too?
So a crow call, owl hooter later in the day. I like using an owl hooter on up in the day because barred owls will hoot during the day, and it's not something they typically hear, where crows, once they, you can hear crows all day long, and so they become immune to it, just like we would become immune to a crow calling all the time. We tune it out. Mm-hmm. So, but if you want to go to a crow call, which has got a little more rasp to it, a little more, you know, aggressive sound that may trigger. And again, you want to do short, loud burst in case he gobbles right away if he's close, or, you know, just to get that gobble and you make sure you hear it. Shock G.
Yes, yes.
So just as quick,
worked.
and listen for the gobble. If nothing, then, you know, wait a few seconds, let things calm down so that you can shock him again. Gobbles the next time, and you may want to get a little louder and more cause in your crow calling.
Okay.
So I hope that's not too loud for the viewers. I got a mic right here. But anyway, you want to do that. And you'll hear me kind of grunting. And I think that's what waterfowlers use when they're using a goose call. They're coming out of their diaphragm. Mm-hmm. And it just adds a little more realism to the crow call. If you're just doing a plain, just blowing through it, and if you do that, you hear that sound.
You can definitely hear the difference.
Yes, a little more realistic sound. Again, I don't know how important that is. I mean, to me, realism matters in every aspect of turkey hunting. If you sound realistic, you can't blame it on anything else. You know,
right.
You can't blame it on your call if it doesn't work out. So that's what I go to right there. If I haven't got one to gobble after hitting an owl hooter or a crow call, turkey calls are great locator calls. Okay. But you got to be careful because he may gobble to it and then start coming in. So just be aware that if he gobbles nearby, already have a place set up, like before you make the turkey call, look, okay, there's a tree there. If one gobbles nearby, I can set up at that tree. So be ready in that regard. So I may use a mouth call, a pot call, or a box call would be my next one. A box call. So
we have a couple of these. We have a short one and a long one. Can you kind of show me the difference between and explain the difference on these for me?
Yeah, so let me hold the long box here.
Okay.
The long box is it's going to be hard to find a long box that sounds as realistic turkey as a short box. And these are made primarily for locating birds. And they have a higher pitch. If it's windy or the birds may be a long ways off, that higher pitch cuts through the wind, cuts through the sound, and it will trigger a gobble sometimes. Okay. And at those longer distances, it will sound like a turkey yelping. Now, and so I guess the drawback to a long box is it's very long. So unless you
have a pack or a bag on you to carry.
You need to have a place to carry it. So a short box sometimes is a little better option because it is smaller. You can still get birds to gobble to it. I mean, they'll gobble to it because it's a turkey call. And so you can just run and then they'll gobble to that.
Okay.
Just be careful when you're running or be aware, when you're running a box call, one of the most common mistakes I see is someone takes the call and they'll just slowly drag the lid. And it's like they're cranking it up. Mm-hmm. A turkey doesn't do that. Just start yelping. That's what a turkey sounds like. Right. They don't drag that first note out like that. And so try to be realistic. Keep your first series of yelps short and listen for that gobble. Okay. If nothing then you might want to add some cuts and followed by some yelps, and then you can get some yelping that way, or get some gobbles to trigger from your calling that way. Mouth call is one of my favorite ones to use. Well, let me start off with the pot call first, then I'll go into the mouth call. I carry a pot call with me. I only carry one really, and sometimes I swap up what I carry. Mm-hmm. Most of the time it's a glass surface call. Sometimes it's a slate surface call, and we call them pot calls. Some people call them pan and peg calls because it does have the shape of a pan more than it does a pot. But typically people call it a pot call, and you call it by the surface, a slate surface pot call, a glass surface pot call. And then you have your striker. I'm trying to locate birds with a pot call. I like to start off with cutting, followed by a few yelps, and then listen for that gobble. And the cutting is just to get the attention of the bird, and then the yelps trigger that gobble. And I'm listening for that gobble.
Okay.
If nothing responds to that, then I may get a little aggressive, a little louder series, calling, yelping. And I'm not afraid to follow up calling or a pot calling right away with mouth calling. I've had birds that didn't gobble to a pot call, but then switched to a mouth call right away, and that different sound. Maybe they thought it was another hen that fired up, and that would trigger a gobble. Same thing with the mouth call. I'm going to start off with a couple cuts and some yelping, and then, if nothing gobbles, more aggressive. So for mouth call, and I'm out there trying to get a bird to gobble. Now I'm listening for that gobble, and if nothing gobbles to that, then I may get a little louder, longer series. And you got to be listening while you're doing that, because in the silence, what little short silence there is in between cuts, you might hear that, just a little reverb of a gobble. So be aware of that, and always keep your ear open for the gobble, even when you're walking and when you're calling. But that's kind of the routine I go through. And then I work my way up. Once I switch over to turkey calls, I very seldom go back to anything else.
Okay.
I just walk, and if you're trolling for fish, I'm trolling for turkeys, and I'm cruising around, I'm trying to get them to gobble, and then I can set up on them. So that's kind of my day. A long day, I will just set up and blind call, just set in one spot where I think there might be birds, and just call periodically. And I don't typically sit in one spot more than 30, 45 minutes to an hour, if nothing comes in by other areas.
Okay. That's super
awesome.
awesome.
I didn't stretch that out too long.
No, that's super interesting. It's really fun to hear all the different techniques and the use for the different calls, because I personally would not have known about a shot owl and the crow and the clapping and those. So you were kind of explaining to me before we started filming kind of the proper way to hold the pot call. Is that something you kind of want to quick show the viewers?
Yeah. It has little holes in the bottom. And this is where primarily all your sound's going to come from. Okay. And I see one of the common mistakes is somebody grabs the call and they hold it like that. You're muffling the call. And what you need to do is actually take your fingertips and hold it so that the sound can come out of the bottom. And then when you're running the call itself, your striker, when you condition the call, you sound, and then the striker comes across.
I'm going to kind of hold that up for them to see the scratch on the pot right here.
So can you see that?
So we have some sandpaper over here that we were using to kind of rough them up.
Yeah, so you just want to take it and there are tutorials online you can Google and find conditioning tutorials for different surfaces and which is best. But for this live broadcast, I'll just show you how to scuff it back and forth there. And then another mistake I see is pot call. They just drag the striker up and down. Yes, that'll call in a turkey, but if you want to actually sound like a hen yelp, it has that rollover, that high to rasp. Arc your striker motion, kind of like a half circle. And what I do is of a football, and I'm doing that shape of the perimeter of a football. You hear that front high note, and then the rasp. And when you come back the other way, it doesn't make a sound as you drag. So you just keep the peg on the pot and do those little semicircles. And so that way you get all the sound that you can. Now there are times that you want to muffle that sound if you don't want to do a cluck and purr. And so you may want to cup it or put it against your body and kind of muffle the sound and do a cluck the peg real slowly across it. Maybe. And so then you're doing some cutting or yelping, you want to let that sound get out there. And you can control the volume by how much pressure you put on that peg and everything.
That's super cool. So we had some previously submitted questions from viewers. So do you want to run through some of those and maybe answer some of those for the viewers?
I'll do my best.
All right. So question number 1, should I call to a gobbler on the roost or wait until he flies down? And how do you deal with henned up gobblers?
Okay. The gobbler and roost, we actually dealt with this. I was just in Florida last week, and we kind of dealt with this same situation. We had a bird that we went in and listened the morning before the season started and heard him gobble on the roost. We came back in the next morning hoping he would roost in the same area, and luckily he did. We had no idea whether there was hens with him or not, and so, because all we heard was him gobbling. What I typically do is I call to a roosted bird, and I try not to get more than 100 yards to him. I don't like to get any closer than that, because if you call and he can see the ground below him, he should be able to see a hen, and instead he's going to see you over there scratching or something because you're right below. But if I'm at the desired distance from him, I will call to him. Number one, I don't know if he has hens with him. They may, and I want him to be interested in this hen over here. I want him to have his mind on me. And so I will call to him and I will gauge his response. If he's gobbling pretty good to me, I'll just keep it kind of moderate. If he's not gobbling so much to me and like he's not interested, I may ramp it up and get a little more aggressive in my calling. A lot of people are worried that that's going to hang them up on the tree, and they're not going to fly down. They're just going to sit up there and gobble. I haven't seen that happen personally. And if he does stay up in the tree, I've got all day to wait right there below the tree for him to fly down. So I'm in no big hurry. But I want his attention on me that when he decides to fly down, he comes our way. And on the Florida hunt, although we didn't hear any hens, he pitched our way, but then he fanned back to the woods, and all of a sudden we start hearing hen yelps. So he did have hens with him. But what kind of worked for us, not only did he come down first in our direction, the hens flew that way, and the hens came to our calling and drug him with right behind them to us. And so we were able to have a successful hunt that way. So I typically call to a rooster bird all the time, and I'm not afraid to, I don't think it's going to scare them. I think they're used to hearing turkeys, and, if it's a new hen, turkeys don't always, I think what a lot of people are worried about is they start calling in the morning, and it's a bird that the gobbler didn't know was there the afternoon before. But sometimes hens will fly up quiet, and gobblers won't know. So that's the way I look at it anyway.
Okay. So if you see a hen coming towards your turkey, what do you do?
If I see a hen coming
towards your tom? The one we talked about earlier.
If you see, okay. Hen, okay, I've had this question before also. I'm working a bird, and a hen comes by me going towards the tom I'm working.
Yes.
And that's, I guess, the question they're asking. What do I do in that situation? Some people will scare them off, and I know it's a good tactic, a popular tactic. A lot of people like to scare the hen so it doesn't get with that gobbler and take it in another direction. In recent years, that you can age a turkey by its wing patch, and I wish I had something here. There's a little patch of feathers on the side of its wings, and you can tell whether it's a juvenile or an adult, and this applies to the males and the females. How does this relate to hens? Well, if it's an adult hen, and I can look at her wing patch and tell it's adult, I will scare her away, because if she gets over that gobbler and she's done went by me, she's likely not going to bring it back. Juvenile hens love to talk and love to come to your calling. 75% of the time, if you call a hen to your setup, it's usually a juvenile hen. If you look at a wing patch and you tell it, they love to, because, I mean, they're only a year old. They still have that instinct to be sisters, and so when they hear another turkey call, they group up. Let her slide on by. The gobbler, you know, he would breed her if she'd let him, but the young ones aren't ready to breed typically that early in the season, or early in the season. It's usually later in the season they become. But you can call her back and drag him with you, and that's happened a couple times. It doesn't work all the time, but I'd much rather a juvenile hen get to that to me than an adult hen. Adult hen's already been here. She's going to take the gobbler and go where she wants. Easy to call back as a juvenile hen. So I look at the age, juvenile or adult, and I scare the adult hens away and I go about their business.
Interesting.
Yep.
So what is your favorite style of hunting? Blind calling from one spot or running and gunning?
Running and gunning is easily my favorite tactic. It just gets to be, I love deer hunting, but it gets a little boring sitting in one spot all day waiting for something to come by or something to happen. I like to make things happen. Plus, if the birds are quiet and you're running and gunning, walking and calling, or whatever you want to call it, you're scouting at the same time. You're seeing fresh tracks. You're seeing terrain that you didn't know was on the property. Maybe it's a new property and you don't know it that well. So you in essence, think of the terrain, and you're learning, you know, if you do get on a bird, now you know more about the property you're hunting. So you're always learning by running and gunning. There's a benefit to that. Now, if I've been running and gunning most of the day and I'm tired, a lot of people will just go back to their house or wherever and eat and take a nap. Mm-hmm. Line call in one spot, and if I doze off for a few minutes, so what? But I'm still out there and I'm hunting. And it's worked out a lot of times. I can get lucky and kill one that way. But if I had to choose one, running and gunning is not only more entertaining for me, you know, you get to see more stuff, but it's more beneficial. You're learning stuff as you move around, and you're covering more ground. You're trolling for, and I think it helps you to be more successful, really. So
that's super cool. So what do you do if you're out turkey hunting and the turkeys are not gobbling?
I don't even want to think about those days. That's horrible. That's why we turkey hunt, because we want to hear that gobble. We want to interact with them. There's not a whole lot you can do. I mean, other than cover a lot of ground or blind call from one spot all day. I like to run and gun. So even when the birds are quiet, I'm running and gunning. I'm trying to find these birds. So that's what I'm going to do. One of my favorite tactics, or not necessarily my favorite, but the way I like to, if I'm in an area with some hills, and it's a large tract of land, I like to get on a ridge or a spine and walk and call from it. That way my sound's carrying into both valleys. And then I'll sometimes taper down into a bottom, and then you come up another spine, these little finger ridges, and I'll work those back and forth. And I'm covering, eventually, if I'm lucky, I'll get one to gobble to me. And just covering ground is what I do on those days. There's not a whole lot you can do.
Okay, just don't get discouraged.
Yeah, and stick with it and cover as much ground as possible, and you'll eventually come across a hot bird.
Decoy setup, does it change depending on the season or throughout the season?
I get that question a lot. I don't put a lot of weight into early season they're flocked up, middle season or late season the hens are all gone to nest. I've come up with basically one decoy setup that I see works year round, all season long rather. And if you go out there and you say, okay, I should put this decoy setup because I think they should be doing this, or I'm doing this, it's a lot of guessing. Decoy is what I primarily use. There's just that Jake, and sometimes I put a hen with it. I stick with that, then I don't have to worry about it. I got enough stuff to worry about than trying to guess what the turkey's mood are. Right. And with a Jake, it's not a real aggressive posture, so even if it's not a dominant time it sees it, they'll still come in. If it's a dominant time, they'll still come in. You don't need to have a strutter out there. A strutter, in my opinion, is a coin toss. It could blow up in your face, or it could work magic. But with a Jake, you kind of got the best of both worlds. It's not going to scare off those subordinates, and it's not going to, and it'll still, call in the aggressive times too. And so if I had to pick just one, it's just going to be a Jake decoy. Sometimes I put a hen with it, and I always put the Jake in the back, following the hen, which looks natural. You see the gobblers following the hens all the time, and 99.999% of the time, the gobbler comes in, he goes straight to that Jake.
Okay.
They just bypass that hen. They want to take that competitor out first and then go breed the hen. So put that Jake decoy or that male turkey decoy where you want to take the shot. Don't have him sitting over there in a tree in your way, because he's going to go to it. Now you got a tree to get around. So make sure
placement is important.
Yes, make sure you got a clear shot on your decoy, because that's where he's going to end up, on that male decoy.
Okay. Live, so let's see what we have for questions now on our live video. Do you have any instructional DVDs for sale?
No, I do not. I do have a tutorial. That's the only one I've produced. I know I've been asked to produce a follow-up to that, but I just called Mechanics, and it's based. And we could talk about that a little bit if you like. Picking, a lot of people look at mouth calls and then they try another. And the problem with mouth calls is you need to find, when your tongue forms a little channel of air. And so you may notice that a combo cut or a bat wing works for you. Another cut, a ghost cut call may not work for you. There's a reason for that. Your channel of air is right there on that, where that big gap is missing out of that top reed. So find a cut that works for you, say a bat wing. Manufacturers, it could be from anybody. There's several here I got from the Sportsman Guide warehouse. But buy a bunch of bat wings, and may vary on those calls, and you may find one that really works for you. So don't be so concerned about the manufacturer. Be concerned with the cut of the call. That's what you want to worry about. And it explains all that in the tutorial, and it's on. You can just Google it.
And is the tutorial also available on your website? Yeah,
ColoradoTurkeys.com. The homepage right there at the bottom, right below the main video.
Awesome. So do you want to show them some of the calls that you can get here at Sportsman's Guide?
So yeah, this is, you guys gave me this. This is.
So we have the short box, wet box, and all of the products that we used in this video that are available at Sportsman's Guide, we will list below in the comments after the live video. And
that one has a little, so if it does get wet.
Show them the inside?
Yeah, so it still plays when the call is wet, in the rain or whatever. And then you have a long box here. You want to try and play that?
Let's see.
There you go. Just get a nice follow-through stroke. Hold it like this at the bottom.
Okay.
Hold your lid. All the way through.
And that one doesn't have the seal like this one did, so it won't play.
So this is just your long box. This is the one we talked about earlier. It's got a higher turkey, but not as realistic short box, but it's made for cutting through that wind and carrying those long distances. And then you have your owl hooter here. So yeah, you can get all the calls you need. I went through the whole catalog, and there's anything we mentioned today you can find.
Well, Shane, is there anything else you'd like to touch on that's important for this turkey season coming up?
I don't know. There's a lot to talk about.
Well, we really appreciate your time and all of your tips and tricks and hearing all your calls. Like I said again, if you guys have any questions afterwards, go ahead and post those below, and when Shane gets time, he'll try to look through those and answer when he can. Also list the product below as well.
Yep. So this is a busy time for me, but I will try my best. As I get a break, I will look through the comments and I'll answer any questions.
Awesome. Well, it's been really nice talking with you.
Tanya.
And don't forget to check out sportsmansguide.com, and don't forget to share the thrill.